So, I wasn't gonna do a video on Avengers Infinity War, mostly because the time it would take to make a decent video would be greater than the time I thought the subject would be relevant, but then I somehow managed to sneak into a theater that was showing it the day before it came out, and I kind of feel obligated at this point to say something about it, you know? When life does occasionally hand you a glass of lemonade, you don't smack it out of life's hands and demand hard liquor, right? Oh, and let's get something out of the way. This is going to be spoiler-tastic, not necessarily because I take pleasure in ruining movies for others, but mostly because regardless of what I say, you're going to see it. And you're going to see it soon, so a spoiler-free discussion is kind of pointless in the grand scheme of everything. So yeah, major spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Infinity War, go out and watch it, and then maybe come back if you still feel like it. Okay, so for those of you who are still here, watching Infinity War was kinda like watching a long succession of drunk men and women walk the high wire with no net in a back alley circus, and whether it succeeded or not, Infinity War is definitely as bold as these strategically planned, calculated big budget risks get. As for how I actually felt about the movie, meh? I don't know, I really don't know. It's clear the team behind it has talent, because of course they do, this is Marvel after all, and I enjoyed it while it was on, but afterwards I couldn't help but feel manipulated. Like I was tricked into liking something flashy but insubstantial, and I just don't know how to feel about that yet. The parts that needed to work clearly worked. It's funny when it's supposed to be funny, and when it wants to be suspenseful, Infinity War is goddamn terrifying. But I can't help but feel like the very few parts that don't work, and I can't stress that enough, the very few parts, might actually tip the scales here. And because the parts that don't work are more interesting than the rest of it, I feel more than a little compelled to explain myself. Like, Infinity War is manipulative. Yeah, but of course it is. It's art. That's what it's supposed to do. What I really mean is forcing me to watch all my childhood heroes, cause yeah, I'm young enough to have grown up in the MCU, be brutally killed on screen feels like cheating. Of course I'm gonna feel bad watching Peter Parker die in Tony Stark's arms. It's freaking Peter Parker dying in Tony Stark's arms. But divorced of the context that there will be another movie and these characters will be back soon, did the other Dust Ball deaths really mean anything? Seeing Drax cut into chunky blocks of flesh was goddamn traumatizing. But watching him turn to dust, even when I imagine he's dead for realsies, really doesn't faze me. And knowing that, it feels cruel, abusive, and even cheap to pretend that Thanos didn't just teleport half the universe into some other reality or something. And it's exactly those kind of thoughts that plague me as I left the theater. The kind where I totally freak out about some small aspect of the movie, followed by a sobering afterthought. Like, wasn't it cool how Groot is a part of Stormbreaker? And isn't it awesome how Thor moved from a hammer to an axe, essentially highlighting his transition to a much darker character, since you can kind of pretend that smashing someone in the head with a metal hammer isn't necessarily lethal, but you can only draw blood with an axe. Yeah, that's pretty cool as far as metaphors go. It's a shame the axe looked like an oversized toy. And I kinda like the fun-loving heroic Thor from Ragnarok. And Thor 2.0 seems to only really be motivated by revenge, and maybe that's why I felt like he was a lot flatter than usual, which is saying a lot for Thor. These thoughts just keep piling up the longer I think about the movie. Like, the movie stresses that the heroic attribute of willing to sacrifice everything for the greater good is kinda monstrous in reality, and that's a really cool theme that juxtaposes the lighthearted tone of Marvel movies with the darker cousins in the DCU. I just wish they'd let it be subtext. There's nothing wrong with repeating the same scene for emphasis or contrast, but Jesus, is this movie repetitive. We constantly see people forced to kill their friends for the greater good, and every time they make the sacrifice, and I'm not really sure what it adds to. The closest contrasting narrative beat would be between Thanos and Star-Lord. We've already seen that Star-Lord would be willing to sacrifice Gamora for the greater good, but he isn't willing to put aside his emotions and not punch Thanos when he finds out that Thanos did the exact same thing, and that's really interesting to me. If Thanos is evil for murdering Gamora, what is Quill? Infinity War needed more of these moments, instances where one character's actions recontextualizes the actions of another. I mean, if you're gonna repeat the same scene over and over again, shouldn't the audience get something out of it? but then again, when the narrative beat works, it hits hard, and I think that's ultimately how I feel about the movie as a whole. Avengers Infinity War is a brutal, abusive punt to the childhood, an emotional gut punch that only lets you laugh so you know the tears are real. It might pull your strings and work you like a puppet, but that's only because the MCU tied the knot itself over years and years of hard-won emotional attachment to its characters. As bold as it is brutal, Infinity War doesn't just seek to shake up the Marvel Universe, but decimate it, leaving a bigger mark than Avengers, Ultron, and Civil War combined. And no matter how I feel about it now, watching Infinity War was one hell of a ride. An experience that only a movie of this scale and magnitude could ever achieve, and one that I don't think will ever be replicated again. But hopefully you've already seen it, because again, this is not a review. Think of it more as, I don't know, reconciliation? My name isn't important. Thank you for watching.